Okay guys, welcome back. We've been sketching hyperbolas, and in particular, if you look at this here, we were looking at the graph of this, okay, this little guy here. Y is equal to 2 over x minus 2. So it's the basic graph. So we picked x values, we worked out the 2 over x values, the y values, and then we subtracted 2 because of this guy there. And we've got the points. Now I'm going to write them down. I've got minus 2, minus 3, minus 1, minus 4, 1, 0, and 2, minus 1. And we're going to plot that. So let's go to the next slide, and I'm going to rewrite those points for you. Okay, so I've got my little graph, and I've got my points here. So I know the first point is mine. Firstly, we've got an asymptote as well. That's very important. The graph looks like this. Y is equal to 2 over x minus 2. So that we go to minus 2. So you put a little asymptote in here. That's very, very important. Y equals minus 2. In other words, it's the basic graph of 2 over x dropped. Okay, so grade 11s, watch this. Now, if we took our little x values here, if you remember, we had minus 2 and minus 3. Remember, if x was minus 2, what would that be? 2 over minus 2 is minus 1, minus 2, 3. And we had that from the last things. If you go back and check there, have a look here. If we go and check that, you see, we've got minus 2, minus 3 there. Okay, so let's continue with this. And so we push minus 2, minus 3, so it goes down here and gives us our little point. So it's minus 2, minus 3 over here, 1, 2, 3. There's a point. Then you've got the other point that we had was minus 1 and minus 4. If x is minus 1, 2 over minus 1 is minus 2 is minus 4. So it's minus 1, minus 4, which is there. We had that there. Then we've got the next point was 1 and 0. And the other one was 2 and negative 1. That's what he had. 1, 0 is there, and definitely 2, negative 1 is there. So now once you've got that, you've got your little graph there, and you've got your asymptotes. Now what's important is there's two asymptotes. That's that graph. The one asymptote is going to be this one, which is your horizontal. Your vertical is x equals 0. Your vertical, grade 11s, be careful of this. There's two asymptotes for the hyperbola. So watch out for that. It's very important. Okay, now the next one, which I want to do, is so easy if you follow the system that I'm going to do. It's really straightforward. Now watch this. To sketch this graph, the most important thing to be aware of is this. Now, how do we deal with this? You've got this guy and this guy. Now that's going to give you your vertical asymptote. And how we do it, we put the whole thing equal to 0. That's where it's not allowed. And x equals 2. Now, because it's 2, you get a vertical asymptote. But this is actually 2 units to the right. The mother graph, 2 over x, the basic graph shifts 2 units right. That tells me 1 unit up. Now that's going to be very critical, and I'm going to develop this as we go along. Okay, now watch this. The first thing is, let's take that. We want our vertical asymptote. Now I always take that bottom thing wherever the x's are changing, x minus 2. I circle that and go x equals 2. And that's the vertical asymptote, the line that does that. Then your horizontal, if you look at this, is that guy. In other words, it's called the horizontal asymptote. So x equals 2, y equals 1. So there, now it's important. When you go x, if it was x plus 2, you would have x equals minus 2. There's a shift left. But with this, look at this. The graph, the basic graph, and your basic graph, this is so important, is y equals 2 over x is going to shift 2 units right and 1 unit up. Okay, now let's have a look at this. This is so important, guys. Now look at this. If you take, you put your asymptotes, x equals 2 and y equals 1 there. Now notice there's a shift of 2 units right and 1 up. From, if these dotted lines were on the axes, you're shifting 2 units right and 1 up. Okay, now if we look at this, there's your horizontal one. The big thing is so important with this. Let's have a look here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with my little x values. Now watch how brilliant this is. You've got an x, and I'm going to work with the graph 2 over x. So we're going to work with 2 over x. Now, if you pick nice values, 2 over minus 2 is minus 1, 2 over minus 1 is minus 2, 2 over 1 is 2, and 2 over 1 is that. Now, if you go, now I'm going to talk about the new x values. Now, this is the key feature. Because of this guy, x equals 2. In other words, you're going to shift the x's. These are going to shift. The x's shift to the right. And these y values go 1 up. Okay, that's important. because it's there. If you put it equal to, if there was a plus there, it would be minus 2, telling you you're shifting it. So what you do is you look at that guy at the bottom and you go x equals 2, and then you can easily shift it up and down. Okay, that's so important. Okay, now people, what we now do is we're going to say, okay, if you do that, if you shift these right, what you're essentially doing is you're adding 2. So if you add 2, this is the new x and the new y's. Okay, the new x is if you add 2, you're adding 2, shifting. It's 0, add 2, and add 2, and the y's you add up. So you lift this up, you add up 1. So add 1, add 1, add 1, and add 1. Okay, and that is really so important, because now you can actually sketch the graph quite nicely if you plot these new points. Okay, so that's important. So if we do that, let's have a look. What are our asymptotes? Okay, let's look at our asymptotes. We've got x equals 2 and y equals 1. So all we need to do now is to plot those points, and how we go, and let's just do that quickly here. Okay, now I've got those, you've got them written down. The 1 point was 0, 0, that's the new x. 0, 0 was and then you had 1, negative 1, those were from the table. And then you had 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 3. And you can have 4 and 2, which is there. And then once you've got those, you can plot those points. Look at this, there we go. You've got your hyperbola with its asymptotes. You've got some wonderful points there, 4 and 2, 0 and 0. That comes from that table, and then obviously 1 and negative 1 there. And you've got your graph. Now, people, that's important. Don't go away. We're going to do some more in the next session. It's so important, this work. Stay with us.